Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Dun& Bradstreet webinar. The topic of today's webinar is rebooting your business for the new normal. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you our esteemed speaker for this webinar, Dr. Arun Singh, Global Chief Economist for Dun& Bradstreet. Dr. Singh has worked across global quantitative and qualitative economic research, econometric modeling, and commodity and industry research for the past 2 decades. He has provided strategic advice and expertise to aid decision-making within government and private organizations. Dr. Singh's ability to connect economic insight and data and explain business implications has led to him becoming a trusted advisor and expert for media and government and clients alike. Before we begin the session, I would like to tell you all about certain things that we will follow during the webinar. Participants will not have access to talk during the entire length of the webinar to avoid any disruption during the webinar. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. You can ask your questions using the Q&A tab on your screen. So I request you all to kindly note down any questions that you may have and ask the same during the Q&A session. Please note that you have to write your full name and your organization name before asking the question. I now hand over the control to Dr. Arun Singh.
Thank you, Fausto, for such a wonderful introduction. And welcome all. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Rebooting Your Business for the New Normal. This is the one question everyone is basically asking to each other, especially when unlock version started. During the lockdown version, people were wondering, people were thinking about how things will shape, where we are headed. Maybe there was every day used to be what you call a hope that things will resolve. As we progressed, that hope was somehow basically lost in the various version of lockdown, and then again re-emerged during the various version of unlock in the economy. That's for India, that's same for the global organization. Now the best thing is that now we know that things not going to be the same what it used to be prior to COVID disruption, prior to February 2020, which means things are moving into the what we call a new normal, what we call in fact the new terms, the next normal. Things not going to be the same what it used to be. Things is completely going to be different. In that scenario, we need to understand that how to recalibrate our most of approach, revisit traditional model, and things about and what basically the future look like, so as you are moving in a direction which can be well appreciated and giving a good reward. Now, moving on for today's session, I have basically three divided overall session in a three broad categories. One, today I'm going to talk about what you call trends in the COVID-19 cases and rebooting. The second, the business sentiment, performance, and the risk. Basically, now unlock version started across the world, and there are risk of second wave, third wave, some of the countries, how things are shaping. That's the second piece we'll talk about. And the third is very effective, is basically what we are talking about today, is how to create an effective business plan for 2021, because 2021 is going to be a new normal and it's the next normal, which means your traditional business model is not going to be as effective as it should be. So it's better to have a model which is basically suited for the next normal scenario. Moving on to the first part, this is basically talks about four category of what you call the trends in the COVID-19 cases today is effective containment, amelioration, relapse, and high caseload. What we have done here, basis the number of cases emanating in these countries, we put together these so many countries into this four broad bucket. What this bucket means, uh, in fact, this pandemic is shaping up the different ways in different economies. At this point of time, let's say, for example, China, New Zealand, Taiwan seems to have effective contained the virus with less than 50 new daily cases coming up. On the other hand, we have countries like Germany, Italy, Russia, and the UK are witnessing a relapse or a second wave with the little sign of retraction. In other countries where there has been a second wave, like France, Peru, Netherlands, cases are in the decrease. So basically, there are a group of countries which can be put into this four bucket to understand which direction this country is going. So as that will decide if you are doing a trade with that particular company in those countries, and you know that what the impact and what the mitigation strategy one should adopt for. If we examine the countries with a second wave, we can see that the rise in infection has not translated into the fatalities, which is good sign. There were about 20,000 cumulative cases in these countries during the start of April 2020. This is when the cases, in fact, fatality rate was around 14%. Now, in November, there are about 125,000 cumulative cases in these countries, and the case fatality rate is around 2%. So while number is going up, it's good to see that fatality rate is going down, which is good sign. Now, this is the two-axis chart. On y-axis, we have what we call stringency index. 0 means low level of restrictions by the government, and 100 means high level of restrictions. On the x-axis, we have what we call the risk of openness index, which is based on whether countries follow the 6 WHO recommendation before easing restrictions further. These recommendations are like, new cases would be reduced to a level that the health system can manage based on healthcare capacity. The second, sufficient public health workforce, and health system capabilities are in place. Outbreak risk or high vulnerability settings are minimized, and there are few more. These are the guidelines they set. In that, they calculate the risk of openness. In June 2020, in fact, the June 1st, 2020, when we looked at the data, India was the top left bucket, what we call the group 3. India score was less than 0.5 in the risk of openness index and slightly higher in terms of stringency index, which means we were experiencing what we call the lockdown version and very thinking about how unlock should be doing. That was the data point. And that's basically India was well placed. There was no risk of openness, and India was basically under the stringency lockdown. Good. It was not part of group 1 where UK, USA, Spain, and neither group 2, Japan, Iran, Serbia, that in spite of risk of openness, they opened up the economy and now they are suffering. Fast forward today, as of November 25, 2020, most economies, including India, is now shifted to what we call the group 1. On the risk of openness, they've gone up. Even countries with the high caseloads and high risk of opening have reduced restrictions to reboot their economies. In some cases, this translated to higher infection and are now face the risk of reversal of economic output gains. Economies in the group 2 have the potential to be impacted severely as they have less stringency despite high risk of opening up. So these are the basically the country mapping. It is very clear to understand that there are group of countries, in spite of low risk of openness, they have stringency. Basically, they just want to put up a place where they don't want to lose out some of the gain they have gathered. Some of the countries, which basically, in spite of high risk of openness, they have opened their index, they have opened their stringency laws, and then guidelines relaxed, and now facing the serious risk of relapse and the COVID-19 second wave or third wave. So that's what you can see, that there are series of countries to the extreme right, which is basically close to one on the risk of openness, and that's basically group of the countries we should be aware of going to create a massive trouble once we start the trade between these two countries. Now, the pandemic is no doubt has resulted in unprecedented level of uncertainty. The global economic policy uncertainty index was its peak during May 2020, was twice the level of peak witnessed during or after the global financial crisis 2008. So you can understand this pandemic has created today to the world. Index is moderating, which is good sign, which means the uncertain index is coming to the what you call the long-term average, which is a good sign for the economy rebooting across the nation. The real economy is retracting from the depth of its collapse following the outbreak of the pandemic and the government various lockdown or enforced guidelines. Now it's coming back to the normal gradually. If I have to look at high frequency data, for example, industrial production, export, credit card payment, unemployment, that's indicate the slowdown is basically declining, which means economy is coming back to the normal gradually across various countries. The China, on other hand, is going to have a strong growth rate as compared to other economy, and in fact, it seems for them the crisis is over. But for rest of the world, this crisis is far to be over. So basically, crisis is going to stay with us. It's just the people need to find out what could be the best way to live with the virus till the vaccine arrives and everyone get vaccinated. Now, how 2021 look like? There are various shapes and structures being studied. You know, on the horizontal axis, you talk about the effectiveness of stimulus package and policy response. Vertical axis talks about the effectiveness of the public health response. Interaction of both curve gives 9 possible scenarios of from both axes high to low. That's 9 possible scenarios. That's covered by the gray shaded as well as the blue shaded. The blue shaded curve, where we see that the possible outcome might be in 2021, provided that things are taken care of. There's effectiveness of economic measures and the public health response. If things are basically taken care of, probably the world economy and most of the countries will follow the curve, which has been shaded by light blue curve. During the GDP growth, I mean, in the 2021, I mean, it's all, in fact, I said that it's all depend on how effective your economic measures and then how effective you have a public health response. Government and central bank have announced several policies, measures, and program. What really would matter is how this trickle down to the real economy and kickstart the investment and consumption cycle. The future pathway at this point of time, after the pandemic or during the pandemic, is also equally important. An intensive second wave or reoccurring waves with higher or equal intensity, like the first wave, will worsen the economic growth. Forget about the U curve. It could be, for many economies, it could be, let's say, what we call L-shaped curve, which means for prolonged. The timely introduction of the vaccine and inculcation of masses is the need of the hour. Now, that's basically one assumption. And other reality is that while the arrival of vaccine is important, another equally important event is equitable access to the vaccine. Equitable access, which means ensuring that the population, even the low income countries, have access to vaccine would be economically beneficial in the long term. Any person, any country, any sectors, irrespective of their income grade, left out will have a far negative impact going ahead, because which means it's going to take a much time to ensure that we are away from uh, you know impact of the vaccine, which means the analysis indicate anywhere between 6 months to 1 year it will take to ensure that everyone got the vaccines, which is basically a critical part. Now, what it mean for GDP? These are the economy we picked, just basically random economy or the relevant economy in terms of their contribution to the overall global economy. They are big economy. They're important in terms of the trade, in terms of pulling global out of recession and keeping into the high growth trajectory. That's why we picked the high important countries. What we have done, 2019 GDP data, we have indexed to 100. As you see that many economies may not return to the pre-pandemic output levels until 2020. There are China, in fact, it will exceed. In fact, it's not going to decline. It every year is going to give a positive growth rate. But there are other economies, India, UK, US, Germany, France. It will take at least 2022 to come back to the 2019 GDP growth rate, which means the major portion of actual GDP is going to be wiped out from the global map, which is serious implication. Now, moving to the second stage, what do you mean by business sentiment, performance, and risk going forward? And that is going to shape the structure from today, and which is very critical, very important, because that's what basically we have to focus on. That's what basically we have to focus on in terms of rebooting economy, in terms of getting all of us into the next wave of growth. The positive things happening, the outbreak of the pandemic, no doubt, led to the freeze of the real economy. Government enforced lockdown, voluntary social distancing measures, and there are many other stuff just collapsed. The sentiment, if you see the June, basically the lowest, which resulted in the optimism level down, and what you call across the sectors, across countries, across platform. Now, the good sign that's going up, the sentiment economic index is the one part, but optimism across various indices tracked by many agencies, including DNB. We also have what we call the DNB optimism index, wherein we do the survey. All those index going up. And in fact, recently, if you take out the Asia, excluding Japan, we are almost close to the pre-pandemic level, which is good sign. Now, in the economics, there's one critical component, what we call is basically the unemployment rate and the job losses, because that has a potential to the derail economy to to the to the extent of the derailment cannot be calculated just because of looking at the number, because it could differ from country to country, sector to sector, but the impact will be very, very harsh, because it just create a ripple effect, and it will basically reach a circle and take economy to the downward trajectory. So then that needs to be taken care of. Globally, if you see, 1 in every 2 employees has a far fear of job losses. um, and in some countries, for example, let's say Germany, it's a very low. But for some countries, let's say Russia and Spain, it's alarmingly high. It's very high. And India, falls in the middle of those groups. So that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, that has a potential to weigh down the aggregate demand in the economy, despite the relief measures provided by the government and the central bank across the nation. The fear of job losses needs to be taken care of appropriately. Otherwise, I just said that, it's going to be a really, really big trouble when we talk about the rebooting economy. We're now talking about getting back to the normal. When we looked at our database and what we have, what we call the COVID-19 commerce disruption tracker. And in our database, basically we cover the largest commercial database, and this gives us the vantage point to observe the impact of the pandemic across the globe. What we find is that while the virus has clearly had an unprecedented impact and complex impact on the business globally, the impact has been asymmetric, affecting different parts of the world to different degrees at different times. If you look at as of November 2022, only 6% of something around 50 million businesses in China is impacted or feel disruption, whereas 94% in the France and 90% in the UK, businesses are feeling disruption. So that's basically the critical point, that it's impacted almost 190 countries globally, but the impact is different. It's as low as 6% of the company in that country to as high as 94% of the company in that country. So we have to be basically mindful that doing a trade with any particular economy, country, and the company, one should be aware of what is the extent of the impact of COVID-19 in those economies. The impact of COVID-19 ripples through the global ecosystem, and and our impact index, which basically I just talked about, takes account in the location risk, industry risk, financial risk, and network risk. That's basically the health of company suppliers and vendors to arrive at the final score for that particular company. This data is also aggregated at the national level, which basically I was trying to present in the previous slide. I already mentioned that the impact of this pandemic has been asymmetric, affecting different parts of the world in a different degrees at a different times, which means it's very critical for us to understand the businesses who are operating in those countries, in fact, what is the impact they're feeling. And in the same example I will take, the businesses in China are now in the low risk category, whereas countries like Brazil, Libya, Congo, they are at high risk of what you call, in fact, very high risk of disruption and the future look like. So it's not just country level impact, it's also the company level impact, which is very critical and very important to understand before we carry out any trade, because it's always good to ensure that you have a vendor who could supply without any disruption, and you have a client base who can pay you on time without any payment default or any getting into the write-off or other stuff. And that's basically COVID-19 impact index talks about. Now, coming to India, nearly 32% of the businesses in India were under the high risk category in May 2020. That figure is now moderated to around 22%. With that share of the low risk businesses, in fact, that's increasing. So that's a good thing. But now look at what Q2 FY 2021 look like. What is Q2 FY? In fact, Q4 FY 20 look like and Q2 FY 2021 look like is basically we compare of the JET score of the 2,330 listed companies today. A company in a stressed category has a relatively high probability of becoming bankrupt. Data shows that 19% of the manufacturing companies and around 6% of the non-manufacturing companies, which were sound in Q4 2020, FY 2020, saw a deterioration in their risk level by Q2 FY 21. While most companies have not seen an improvement or deterioration in their risk level post-COVID-19 era, the level of risk remained substantially high due to the strain in the economy and the corporate sector, which prevailed even before the pandemic. So there was a problem in the corporate sector, in fact, balance sheet of the corporate sector. And the pandemic is just added another problem. We need to be careful of that. So there's a change in terms of what you call the stress category. Now, moving on, in the same set of categories, in fact, we've added more companies. We found that 81% of the what you call manufacturing companies and 75% of the non-manufacturing companies reported a contraction of at least 10% in their net sales during Q1 FY21. 46% of manufacturing and non-manufacturing companies reported a contraction of at least 50% in their net sales during the same period. The economic activity is coming back from the depth of its collapse as a result of the ease lockdown, which you have seen in the past. But the percentage of companies reporting a contraction of at least 10% of their net sales declined to 39% in the manufacturing sector and 56% in the non-manufacturing sector during Q2 FY21. One can see a clear improvement in that space. There are various studies, research happening, and most of you might be aware of. But one thing should be very important and critical, that COVID-19, I was saying, that impacted everyone. Each country, either directly, indirectly, company either positively or negatively. Not everything is basically negatively. There are some positive development one can talk about, what we call digitization. If I take a trend from 2017 to 2019 and take out COVID-19 from the assumptions, and the company in the global might have achieved what you call the required rate of digitization, is basically now squeezed because of the COVID-19, which means what global company might have achieved in, let's say, 2027, in case of, with the perspective of COVID, what you call the digitization, they've achieved now. So thanks to digitization during the COVID, and in fact, the company across the globe, across region, have well adopted the digitization process, which is good, which means we have saved in Asia Pacific, something around 10 years, globally 7 years, Europe 7 years, and North America 6 years, which we could have invested in terms of the digitization, which we have achieved because of our resilience or our robustness towards achieving the globalization or digitization during the pandemic, which is a great sign. Now that brings us to the third section, how to navigate during this crisis and how to create an effective business plan for 2021. Now, I think I'm sure that for most of us, December will be the planning session for 2021, and so as for us, so as for many companies across the world. And now this is the critical month, critical date to understand that how we are willing to navigate during this what you call the recovery phase, where that could also have the second wave, third wave, some of the local lockdown restriction, things like that. There's a four basically the business relationship type where we can evaluate and we can revisit that are we doing good job on that space or not. That's the first two of that is on this slide. There's a vendors and customer. If your supply chain was disrupted during the pandemic, you have already had a look for the alternate vendors, suppliers, or service providers. Now is the time to use the information you have from the experience and make a tiered list of what your business needs to be operational. Now the client base, that's a customer. If your customer's current needs aren't apparent, reach out or send a survey depending on your business and customer base to get insight into what problems your business can help them solve. Now the second two categories is basically what we call the lenders and then community at large. Take a look at your debt vis-a-vis income, your terms and condition and your relationship with your lender. In fact, this has to be looked at from overall perspective. Is this a relationship that makes sense for your business, or is there another institutions that might help your business achieve its goal more effectively? Which means if you want to change, in a nutshell, if you want to basically revisit your lending model, or basically the model adopted by the lenders, you need to carefully scrutinize that. And the fourth and very important component is the basically community at large. Most likely, your entire community at this point of time will be working to get back on its feet. Look for where your business can give back or show appreciation for customers, partners, and friends that supported your business during the pandemic era. You might also be able to find other business you can form an alliance with that either are offering services you need to get back on your feet or need the same services you do. So those are the basically the four element of your business relationship. It's required for all of you, all of us to revisit, and depending on the business, depending on the sector, depending on the client base, need to change and need to adopt that what is best suited to our current business model. Now with that, let me come to a what you call a final slide of basically during this COVID-19, how impact helped to mitigate risk and sustain positive cash flows, but also to create new opportunities for the business growth. They're basically high, there's a medium, there's a low. There's a basically strategic recommendation across all the impacted category, and there's action item. It's very, very prudent, it's very critical, very important for all of us to understand that which section of impact the businesses falls and what are the strategic recommendation one can use and implement the action and take appropriate steps to ensure that impact is mitigated. And it's not just the business, it's also the client side, it's also the vendor side. One can reach out to the index to understand how the supplier community will be impacted, how vendor community will be impacted, how client base will be impacted, so as you secure your both side from a supply side as well as from a payment side. So that has been secured. Keeping abreast of the market conditions requires more than casual observation. Businesses need a systematic, measurable way to understand what matters to their client and where data comes in. By working with experts like many service providers like Dun & Bradstreet, you have a source of highly dynamic data and analytical insight that can keep you up to the speed. DNB, what you call COVID-19 Impact Index, helps not only to mitigate risk and sustain positive cash flow, but also to create what you call the new opportunities for the business growth. With that, I will close my conversation today, and I will move to Q&A session. So I would request everyone to post your question in the Q&A tab. I'll be happy to answer appropriately. Thank you. Yeah. So there's one. In fact, there's one question coming up talking about um, how long overall world economy will take to go back to what you call the growth trajectory. I think earlier in the presentation, I was talking about some of the growth drivers, some of what you call the determinants of the growth, that basically how fast we are able to contain this virus and how we are implementing the vaccine, and that vaccine is basically reaching to everyone, uh, and how fast we are able to control the COVID-19, and looking at all the assumptions and the possible impact and the possible second wave in some of the countries and the third wave in some other countries. It seems that till 2022 we'll be basically what you call struggling to reach out to the pre-pandemic level, which means one can expect the growth scenario to start from 2023 onward from the at a global level, which means 2020, 2021, 2022 could be taken as a disruption as well as the recovery phase. And from 2023 onward, one can start taking into the what you call the growth phase for most of the stuff. Yeah. So, if you basically, if you go through what basically I was trying to talk about, uh, uh, in fact, uh, when I was basically talking about that, there are one question talking about what are the consideration one can have for the supplier evaluation. Uh, During COVID-19 era, the first things, starting from the January and the February, I remember that we were talking about the supply chain disruption. We were talking about that how supply chain disruption is going to create the for masses, and that's going to create a much more other problem for the rest of the world. That started from the China, and said that company operating from the China will have a trouble. The company dealing with the China will have a trouble, and then things started started flowing in terms of the advisory and other guidelines. But starting from March, when the China come to the normal, the rest of the world started showing the sign of symptom, and the disruption started. So the supply chain, which started just from the China, spread to the 190 countries. Today is no longer restricted to just particular country or region. It's like widespread. It's like across everyone. The need of art to understand your supplier and the supplier base is to find out which market, which sector they are operating, and which country they are operating, and what is the impact on a scale of 100. It's like say still there's a scope to do with the trade with that person to the company, because everyone is impacted. It's just the extent of impact is varying. Someone is just 6%, someone is a 94%. That's what basically I was trying to say, that one need to find the supplier to the country, to the area where it's least impacted compared to the country where it's the most impacted. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the constant monitoring of the supplier health and then sustainability and the sustainable power, and that they can basically keep supplying goods to you. That's two of the things basically is very critical. Amongst there are many, but the two things, I mean, everyone should be careful in terms of understanding that which direction we are headed and how one can take care of the supplier side. So that two things very important. Yeah. So there is one questions coming for the auto segment, um, and you're right, and I do believe that uh, some of the sectors, and that's basically the automobile sectors, is basically the sector who basically have shown promising recovery and then improve. But there's a two things happening at the same play. One, I'll give example of just India, and in I would say that in month of January, the green shoots were visible. In fact, a couple of days back, when Government of India released the GDP data, the chief economic advisor was talking about the green shoots were visible before COVID-19 impact, and in fact, that he was right, and we could see that. we could see that it was very important, and uh, in fact, our own data set was showing that things are improving normally. Just the COVID-19 disrupted everything. But at the moment COVID-19 disrupted, there was already some demand which went on hold, and the people basically started looking at how this is going to impact, how this is going to basically improve, and before they could start the buying segment. And then some of the sector, including the auto segment, is a basically result of that. What I can say is a pending demand is like a pent up demand. Now, gradually this pent up demand will come to the normal. What will be a basically the single point one can understand that is that demand is going to sustainable or not. Looking at the economic recovery across the world, that is a big question everyone is asking, because that will shape up some of the sectoral performance. Today, when we are sitting at the risk of second wave across many nations, this what you call early sign in some of the sector can be controlled in subsequent months. So basically, it's a good sign, but it's highly unlikely that demand will be sustainable for some of these sectors, what is the leading indicator of the economy. So the automobile sector is good today, but certainly is not going to carry forward in terms of the same growth trajectory in the coming months, which means there's a moderation expected before it take up to a new growth trajectory. So I think there is a comment on the basically there's a request on the market. Ideally, we do not comment on the market, but from economic standpoint, I would tell you one thing that sometime market movement have no relation, there's no rationality with the economic growth trajectory or something, what you call the vaccine announcement. Vaccine announcement, uh, I have seen that last 4 5 months, development in the vaccine is not a negative context. Everything is positive. It's just the date kept on deferring. Someone said as early as August, then September, then October, now January. Maybe it will become a February by the time entire world get the vaccine, as I was talking about earlier. That will take another 6 months to 12 months, which means it could be December 2021. There are various research. So any announcement toward the vaccine certainly going to impact market. That's not a big deal. But we have seen that market and the economy is basically diagonally opposite today, because market is now pre-pandemic level. Economy is still not there, and there's many reasons. The market is driven by very high, what you call the high contributing company, and that's basically different. In India, for example, where we have a 94% of the unorganized market, which basically feels the heat of COVID-19 does not reflect in the market. So, from economic standpoint of view, I can say that whether vaccine announcement on the and the way forward certainly will have an impact. Which direction? It's very difficult to say on the market. So the COVID-19 impact index, if you see, uh, the basically it's taken care of some of the parameter we have uh, for each country, and then when we drill down to the company level, basically it talks about that what is the extent of the impact the country will have the business cash flow and the overall business performance. Now, taking that into consideration, businesses can ensure many things. One, they can find supplier or vendor in a country, in a sector, in a segment which is less impacted, so as they can ensure that supplier will not have any problem. They can find a client less impacted, so business is basically healthy running, and will not be business problem. So that's a finding your vendor, supplier, and the customer that can help. The second thing is that you can ensure that your own impact area, and the suggestion in that how long your supplier and your client will be impacted, so as will take to be impacted, so as at least you can continue to do the business with them, so as your cash flow is not impacted. And there are many other ways one can talk about when we basically discuss in a detail. So it takes care of a country level parameter, takes care of the company level parameter, talks about how effective, how good your supplier and client, so as your cash flow is not impacted on that piece. So I think Kavij is talking about Indian company, about the Indian impact of COVID-19 index. Yes, in fact, it is available, and in fact, uh, can help you find your suppliers, fall in which risk category. That's what basically I was talking about, that there are high, low, medium risk category. If you know that your supplier and client fall into that category, one can take appropriate call. So there's a couple of common questions coming from India GDP growth perspective, and I would say that 2021 GDP growth rate, were fiscal year 2022, in fact. Uh, at this point of time, we are projecting something around 6.5% to 6.7% positive growth rate, as against minus 10, roughly around 10% growth rate in this current fiscal year, which is great recovery from minus 10% to the positive 6.5%. You can see that 16 or 17% recovery one can see in India. It's all because of the pent up demand. With the 6.5%, 6.7% recovery will still be what you call on par or lower than 2019, but the recovery is visible. But that's assumption looking at what's happening today. Now, assume a scenario where vaccine introduction delayed from the current target of in just a couple of months from now, and the delayed in terms of supplying to the last person in the country, because the last category of vaccination is going to be a working age population, and they are going to drive the GDP for next year. If they are going to get a vaccine last stage, and the last person who get the vaccine could be anywhere between 6 months to 1 year time, if that delay, that has a potential to derail the GDP growth rate by 100 basis point, which means from today's expectation of 6.5%, it will go to 5.5% if the vaccine introduction and the implementation takes time. So it's basically various scenario, various assumption is going to play, and the similar trend basically can be visible across the various countries, and then when you sum up for the world as well. And I think there are many questions, but I'm conscious of the time. I think I know we basically uh, exceeded the time by something around, I think, 4 5 minutes. So I'll just touch base that sectoral question. Basically, uh, it's basically I said that most of the sectors follow a different route of recovery, and the impact is a four level impact. In fact, the two broad level impact is what you call the negative impact and the positive impact. Within negative impact, we have a three categories, what you call severe, high, medium, and within the positive, there's only one. So there's basically four category of impact are visible across all the sectors in India and rest of the world, and that's very clear. Now, looking at the recovery phase, this recovery phase will be basically when we unlock economy completely, will vary, will take as low as 3 months and will take as high as 1 year. The pharmaceutical sectors falls in between. In fact, pharmaceutical sectors to some extent got a benefit from some of the life-saving drug. When I say life-saving drug, is not about the basically the basic ongoing exercise. Basically, talk about the immunity, talk about the other related to the COVID and the significant surge, and the company producing those devices, producing those compound and the substances are basically getting benefit. There are other sectors I've seen that the people have deferred the medicine purchase because of the fear of going out and getting infected. So it's like a balanced approach. There are some segment of the pharma sector doing good job. Some of the sectors of some of the segment within the pharma sector is not doing that great job because people have deferred their stuff. The critical component, what you call the life-saving stuff like that, continue to be the same things. No impact. The consumption is the same thing. Now, that's immediate impact we have seen from the output perspective. From the input perspective, where most of us are highly dependent on what you call the China in terms of getting supplies from them, got disrupted, and hence one have seen the various issues around availability of the drugs, and then you know, what you call the price and other stuff. So it's a mixed approach, and it's a good to keep that momentum high in the pharmaceutical sector. But the benefit what many can see from outside is actually that not the reality for the pharmaceutical sector as well. So uh, and uh, and I know there's a multiple request floating around, and uh, there are basically uh, request for the recorded version. And Kaustav, I know you will ensure that everyone will get a recorded version from us. And with that, I will end today's webinar. And thank you for participating in this webinar. I hope we had an insightful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for sharing all those insights with everyone. And thank you to all our participants for today's webinar. We will be sharing a link for the presentation as well as the recording with everyone who has attended shortly. In case you have any other questions that you want to ask Dr. Singh, you can email us at india@dnb.com. That is India, INDIA, @D for Delhi, N and for Nagpur, B for Bombay, dnb.com. Thank you, everyone.